Greetings from Hanoi, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be able to speak to you today virtually. Of course, it will be so much more exciting if we could do this lecture either interactively or even better if you are here in Hanoi, especially during this time when in a couple of days we will be welcoming our new year, the year of the tiger. And of course, besides festivities and a little bit of time off, it's also a very interesting kind of period of time to observe gender dynamics and gender relations in Vietnam in the process of preparation for TED and conducting different decision makings and how members of the family from the nuclear families and extended families interact. It really shows a very interesting perspective on gender issues in Vietnam, which is also a topic of our mini lecture today. So before I think I should introduce myself. My name is Yen Hoang Ha, and I'm a lecturer at Faculty of International Studies, Hanoi University, where I've worked for around 10 years, more than 10 years now. I got my master's in education, and my PhD was in sociology. And besides teaching, I also participate in different projects, development projects with agencies, local and international agencies, which my work focuses mostly on gender, sexuality, migration, social inclusion, as well as ethnic minority. So today I was given a quite difficult task to speak to you about gender issues in Vietnam in only around 25 minutes. It's extremely difficult to do it because there's so many, there's just so many issues that I would love to cover. But what I wanted to tell you is that I would try to provide with the best of my knowledge. And I hope that with this, you can at least paint a picture and have a gist of what is the current issue in gender in Vietnam. If you're interested in exploring anything in more depth, my email is right here on the slide. You are more than welcome to contact me. And if this is enough of information, then that's great. So at least you know a little bit about the gender situation in Vietnam. So I know that we obviously, with Dr. T's presentation, and you probably also know a little bit about Vietnamese history. We've gone through many different periods, and what we call contemporary Vietnamese society is considered to be from 1945 until now. But today I will only focus on the integration time, which is from 1990s to present, or you'll see that a lot of numbers are very, very current. And one very a perk of this is that there has been a great amount of publications that I will be referring to constantly, and they really help shape this presentation. So if I was asked to speak about gender equality in Vietnam in just a couple short sentences, I think what I would say is Vietnam maintains a positive reputation as a country where women enjoy formal, and I would like to underline the word formal, equality under the law, have comparatively high workforce participation and access to economic opportunity, and ever improving health and higher education attainment. Men, while in more privileged situation, also face many challenges, especially to adhere to the notion of a true man. We'll be speaking about these issues in the coming slides. However, at the aggregate level, closing gender gap in Vietnam must now really move well beyond a focus on basic human capabilities toward addressing the barriers and biases to women's empowerment, participation, and security. I would love to first start by giving you a little bit of the context of where is Vietnam on the global gender map. So Vietnam's ranking by the Global Gender Gap Index of the World Economic Forum has seen fluctuations, as you can see in the table here. Overall, the country has fallen 22 places over the past 5 years. As a comparative index on the closing of gender gaps, the 2020 edition of the report noted that some of Vietnam's fall was due to commensurate improvements in other countries, such as a surge in the proportion of women in the ministries and the leadership and the state leadership positions in other countries. So in other words, it's not that Vietnam has not made progress or has fallen, made worse, but other countries has actually improved quicker or more significantly. Vietnam will recover maybe some of this on the grounds of sub-index on the political empowerment when they do a new report, because we just recently had elections in 2021. According to this report, a standout for Vietnam is in performance on economic opportunity and participation, based on the gender gap in labor participation, earnings, and advancement. Vietnam has continued to outperform the majority of countries, even including some high-income peers. The country also fares well on the parity in education sub-index, measuring gender gaps in literacy and enrollment in primary, secondary, as well as tertiary education. On the political empowerment sub-index, this was published, like I said, before the elections in 2021, Vietnam's drop in ranking over the past 5 years, in the part due to the low number of and the lack of female ministers, and by never having had a woman as a head of state. The extreme outlier for Vietnam is on health and survival. You can see the numbers here. Not only have they dropped, but they are ranked very, very low. This captured two indicators: the gender gap in literacy, life expectancy between men and women, and the sex ratio at birth. On this latter measure, Vietnam now numbers among the 5 lowest ranked countries worldwide for what's called missing girls. In-depth analysis of the population housing census in 2019 estimated that around 46,000 female births are missing every year in Vietnam due to its high rates of sex-selective abortion. So women, there are just some numbers here, and maybe the person that is in charge today could just pause this for a little bit, because I won't be reading all of the numbers out, but if you pause, you can look at the numbers more carefully. But if I have to quickly kind of summarize, I think what stands out of those numbers is that women are in more disadvantaged position comparing with men when it comes to social development and family life, and this gap is even more visible within minority groups, ethnic minority groups. So EM is ethnic minority groups, as well as in the rural areas. Yes. Similarly, when it comes to economy, again, if you could pause this for a second, you can look at the numbers more closely. But you can also see that labor force participation rate is, lower among female than male. Gender pay gap is also different. We'll be talking about in more detail in a second. There's a lot of kind of care work and domestic work and emotional work performed by female that is not as valued as income generating or like white collar maybe jobs. Women also a lot of female work in informal sectors and in kind of 3 or even 4D jobs, which is dangerous, dirty, demanding, and demeaning, and that happens for all groups of women. Either they work in domestically, or they migrate domestically for work, or they migrate internationally for work. This is quite common. So this is a graph to show the labor force participation rate by gender in Vietnam region, which is Asia Pacific as well as globally in past 10 years. So if you can see line here, the orange line, which is the fourth one from the top here. It's the Vietnamese female ratio of rate of the labor force participation, and you can see that past 10 years it has been quite steady, around 70 to 75%, which is actually significantly higher than other female in Asia Pacific as well as in the world. However, it's significantly lower in the global, if we compare with the male workforce globally as well as in Asia Pacific and in Vietnam too. So yes. So we also, another issue is that women's leadership is not being really utilized. The number of female leaders is still low and in different sectors. So for example, percentage of female members of National Assembly in this newest cohort is 30.26%, second highest we ever had. Female ministers, we only have, of 22 ministers, we only have 2 ministers that are female, and percentage of female people councils deputies is only 29%. Women delegates, women delegates often work on committees that are, slightly less influential, like ethnic council, which has 51% members that are female, committee on culture, education, youth, adolescents, and children, which is 48.6%, and social committee, which is 43%. On the committees such as finance and budget, there's only 15.2% of female members, and committee on defense and security, there is only 6.3%. Interestingly, both male and female voters on election day prefer to elect men to be representatives of the National Assembly and People's Council due to prejudice about women's capacity for the leadership, which was indicated in a number of research. When it comes to economy, only 17% of large businesses are run by women, 34.1% of foreign invested enterprises are managed by women, and women make up 15.4% of board of publicly listed companies. And this is actually, in the ASEAN region, Vietnam has the second highest proportion of women on the boards of publicly listed companies, just after Thailand. However, the rate is still really low, which is 15.4%, and for Thailand is 20.4%. So female chairmen on the board of directors is 7.8%, and only 23% of agricultural cooperatives are led by women. In the other areas, such as education, only 13% of departments directors and 34% of the department's deputy directors are women. So women economic capability is also being limited. While women work the same amount of hours as men, and there's no significant difference in educational attainment, urban woman income is only 78.5% of men's income. So the gender gap in income is around 21.5%. And the global gender gap is around 20.5%. So it's around the same number in urban areas. However, in the rural areas, it's much higher, which is 35.2%. Women make up the majority of lower paying employment sectors and the labor market and in part-time jobs. They also do much more precarious work, and even within the same kind of sector or even within the same job, women will be given tasks that are paid less. According to Action 8 2016, women spend 275 minutes every day on domestic work, comparing with 170 minutes of those spent by men. So you can see that's around 100 minutes more, which is like an hour and a half, which is quite significant. While both of them, do work, are also employed in professional work. Percentage of children under 3 years old going to kindergarten is 28.9%. And why is this number important? Because as we can see, there's only around 1/3 of children that go to kindergarten. And if they don't go to the kindergarten and they stay home, guess who cares for them? Women in the family. So the number is to show that the burden of caring falls heavily on the woman. So in urban, I want to give you another example. For example, in urban families, without clean water connected directly to the house, water collecting duty will fall 69% in 69% household on women, in 29% household on men, and 9% on both male and female. So when we think, obviously I don't agree with this stereotype, but it's a little bit ironic, right? Because carrying water requires a lot of physical strength, which men are known for, but because collecting water falls under kind of domestic duty, it actually falls on woman's shoulder. Another important numbers when it comes to gender-based violence. So the National Survey on Violence Against Women in Vietnam in 2019, conducted by GSO, General Statistics Office, shows that nearly 2 out of 3 women experience one or more forms of physical, sexual, emotional, or economic violence. Among that, nearly 32% of women still currently experience violence, which means in the past 12 months at the time of the research. The study also shows that, with the exception for sexual violence, the rate of violence against women in all forms in 2019 is lower than 2010, which is a very good news. However, the proportion of women experiencing sexual violence from their husbands in their lifetime in 2019, it's 13.2%. Was higher than in 2010, which was 9.9%. This is especially true among young women aged 18 to 24. While this reflects an increase in violence, it may also be a result of social change in which women are more open to talking about sex and sexual violence, and coming forward with accusations, and being more comfortable and encouraged, and having good services and support system to share their experiences and their stories. If we look more deeply at the intersecting identities, women with disabilities, trans women, younger women are more likely to experience forms of violence, especially domestic violence. So that is, there are some good news, but obviously it's still not good enough. There's also a very alarming imbalance at birth. So what is kind of normal numbers is, for every 100 girls or boys of either sex, we know it's very, very kind of dualistic like that, there is 105 children of the opposite sex. So 1 to 105 is kind of a normal ratio. But in Vietnamese culture, with the patriarchal heritage and patriarchal relationship, son preference has long prevailed, and is still being reproduced actually these days. And you can see from the graph here that actually while the mentality of some people has changed, and especially of women has changed, with the declining fertility rate and availability of reproductive technology, evidence actually suggests that this preference mentality has fueled a rapid increase in pre-sex selection interventions, where people choose to give birth to a son. Vietnam has experienced a period of extremely high sex rate at birth, sex ratio at at birth imbalance, which increased rapidly from 105.6 to in 2005 to you can see here 112 or 100 even 14.8 in just a couple of years, more than 10 years. It's very common to seek screening ultrasound for sex determination. The exaggeration by region shows that the highest recorded sex ratio at birth imbalance is in rural areas in the Red River Delta, which is 115, and Red River Delta is here where Hanoi is situated, and the lowest in Central Highland. Other factors including higher educational attainment, socioeconomic status, and being from King ethnic group, which is the majority in our Vietnamese population, were found to also coincide with the highest disparity in the SRB. Also wanted to introduce to you what is a national strategy on gender equality in Vietnam. I think it's it shows a little bit of bigger perspective at the macro level. This kind of national strategy is a great, progress. However, has not yet fully included gender equality. So the small chart here is to show you how the processes, like a bill or proposal, need to go through, like the legislative process, in order to be passed, right? What are different kind of agencies and ministries that it needs to go through. But as for the strategy itself, when it was reviewed last year, only 2/3 of targets were met. So 15 out of 22 targets were met. All 3 targets on political leadership were not achieved. Budget commitments to implementing the national strategy on gender equality has not been realized in full. In fact, although there was a big budget that was approved, only around 57% of initial budget commitment was actually given and spent on it. Gender equality is defined in very, very binary terms, men and women. And like you probably have already noticed, all my data so far has really just showed, just really spoke about, men and women and such. So it doesn't include, non-binary people and gender diverse people. Gender equality is also institutionally associated with the advancement of women and is under responsibility of Vietnamese Women Union, as well as Ministry of Labor, Invalid and Social Affairs, MOLISA. So the coming phase of the national strategy on gender equality is being now simplified and focuses on the readily achievable targets. So increases all women's enrollment in vocational education targets for ethnic minority boys and girls, and some services for LGBTIQ plus people. But issues that are not covered are things like addressing adverse social norms, digital inclusion and parity in STEM sector, women's involvement in disaster risk reduction and environmental decisions, as well as LGBTIQ equality priorities, except for the health services. You can see also that there is, we need to have much more data, and through surveys, more comprehensive surveys, trustworthy data is very, very important. Important reforms toward gender equality that have been enacted in the past phase was in the Labor Code 2019. There was a removal of list of prohibited occupations for women. Yes, we had that. And there is also, there's new implementation of paternity leave, redefinition of sexual harassment, and the gap between men and women's retirement age was reduced from 5 years to only 2 years, and it will be, slowly implemented by 2035. So I wanted to show you this because it shows, this at more macro level. And there is an effort into doing it, and it's on the national agenda. However, it still needs quite a lot of work. So I know that time is coming close. So I just wanted to mention very, very briefly some other issues, but they might be also considered like causes of why this situation still prevails in Vietnamese society. And this situation means a lot of challenges toward gender inequality and this big gap between experiences of men and women in different sectors. So first of all, for women, there's a lot of this encouraged they are still encouraged to conform to very traditional stereotypes of, caretaker, domestic worker, and if they have jobs, they obviously in Vietnam women work a lot, and they they participate very actively in the workforce. Then the burden is not shared or reduced. They actually have double burden, right? There is additional work for women to actually do as presented before. Another thing is the gender issue is often seen as a woman issue. It's still, it's largely regarded as something that is only beneficial for women. It's not seen yet as something that, that would benefit men as well as the society as a whole. And we know that, not having these challenges and this gender equality gap actually affects GDP, 1.8% of Vietnamese GDP. But at macro level and meso and micro level, it's not really considered and not looked at from that way. Women are actually progressing with a higher pace than men. And so men roles as this kind of pillars and in the family and leaders in the society is now being challenged. So although men may be willing to kind of help women advancement, as far as this, it doesn't affect their own benefit, right? So men may resist if there is a change affect them benefiting from maintaining status kind of quo. But I also wanted to talk about, it's really unfair to just, obviously, I don't want to blame men, and we know that they are often seen as culprits of hindering their progress, but they were not really born that way. I think from sociologist kind of a perspective, we know that society, including a lot of women around them, have created them as such, and men are often criticized rather than understood and sympathized, and they are often put as counterweights or confronting with women. So so we just wanted to tell you that. And recently there was a very big survey on and research on men and masculinities in globalizing Vietnam, and this is the kind of the image of the portrait of a true man in Vietnam. And you can see that there are different criteria, and a lot of them still speak that these criteria are really imprinted in the traditional masculine standards, and not every man pursues or meets those criteria, but in reality they all benefit from it, and it does help them as a group maintain this kind of status quo. So this also, however, create a lot of pressure on them, being this kind of breadwinner. And you can see here, especially in the sense of having a financial status and a career, it creates a great pressure on men to the point where it leads to a lot of negative practices and may cause health issues and risk behavior. And you can see here that men experience very negative feelings, of being lonely, isolated, disappointed, discouraged, and or see life as a failure, and even some thought of committing suicide. And just for the context, you can see the proportion here. So Vietnam stands quite high regionally or within the countries with very similar culture. The good thing is we can see the shift has been observed among young men, urban men, men with higher levels of education, and men who are more exposed and have global kind of interactions. Interventions targeting this kind of group of men can bring positive results, which will be difficult to other social, which will be then diffused to other social groups. So I know I'm a little bit over time, so I think this is it for me. Just wanted to show you what might be gender issues in coming years that need to be dealt with. You can just please read it for yourself. But if I had to maybe mention top 5, that will be consequences of sex imbalance at birth, the problem of population aging, the problem of low fertility, climate change, as well as disease. And I wanted to just throw this, sneak in this word cloud here very fast, because this is from one of my classes when I ask my students to, just in one word, tell me what do they think is the biggest causes as well as biggest issue when it comes to gender inequality in Vietnam. And you can see it here, this kind of perspective from your peers, people, kind of your age. And you can see that a lot of this has to do with awareness, stereotyping, this gender expectations and gender-based violence. So I thought it would be maybe interesting for you to see a more peer perspective. So yeah, these are the references and resources that I've used. And, I'd like just to again stress that I've used a lot of these references throughout this slide. And this, giving only a short amount of time, I think quantitative perspective and data statistics was an easy approach, and maybe we'll have a chance to speak about this from a more qualitative perspective. So yeah, these are free and very easily downloadable online. So please just search the title and you should be able to download the PDF of all of them. They are in both Vietnamese and English. And these are some YouTube videos I thought also very interesting. You could explore if you're interested. They're all under 10 minutes. And yeah, so I would like to thank you all. Xin cảm ơn for listening. And I hope you found this, somehow useful. And yeah, please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any further questions. And again, on the occasion of the new year in Vietnam, I would like to wish everybody a lot of health, success, finding and being able to do the things that you really, really love, and being a little bit maybe challenged, I think, in a positive way. So yeah, all the best, and I'm looking forward to maybe seeing you and welcoming you at Faculty of International Studies in the newest future. Thank you so much, and bye everyone.